Welcome to the February 28th Notary Governance call. This is the 4th of 2023. And on today's call, we have a pretty packed agenda. So we're going to kind of be sticking to a schedule as we go through it. Starting off with all the notaries on the line, we'll be walking through some of the recent Slack discussion issues, flagging these for you in case you haven't seen, as well as just making sure that we're updating you as a community on some of these flags that might have gotten raised. We're also going to be talking about the new edition of the Multisig that was created, making sure that all of you that have completed your information have a place to go to verify that, or if you're not on this list, next steps and how to follow up with us. We have two big updates from the working groups taking place. It's going to be RG leading discussions around the DAO discussion that's taking place, as well as some updates around KYC. Under the proposal section of the call, we have 4 current issues that are getting ready to kind of reach that sunset time. I wanted to flag these as one last opportunity for any discussions or comments before those moved over to async and are closed out. Then we have 2 new proposals on the radar. The first is the the per data set and how applications are filed and requesting that LDN data. And the second has to do with the JSON file types. At the end of the call, we have time set aside for community discussion. And if time permits, we have a short presentation from a project built by Fsector. So we'll get to that on this call if time permits. Otherwise, we might punt that back to the remaining call on the 5th. So with that, let's kick off. This is the 4th call. We keep these posted in the governance Google Calendar, as you can see here. So if this is your first time or you haven't been added, follow this link. It will add a link on your shared calendar and you can keep up, as well as see all the next calls that we have. There's 2 calls per day. This is the 0800 Pacific, 1600 UTC call. Any topics that we discuss on this call, we post in the agenda in GitHub. If you'd like to see anything added to the discussion, just feel free just to link it in here or just say, hey, Kevin, may I please have 4 minutes to update on X, Y, and Z as we go through. As a friendly reminder, we're now doing all async discussions on LDN applications async in the Fill Plus review. Or if you have a proposal or a video that you want to share, if you send that to me, I will make sure that it gets bubbled up to the regional notaries in that area. For the notaries that are on the call, I'm just posting the link to the SLA form now in chat. Go ahead and fill this out. If you're not a notary and you're on the call, highly recommend you just sign in. This is an easy way for you to say you've been with the program for X number of time. And if you do happen to apply in a future round of notaries, we'll look at this as a way to kind of verify your participation in the program along with some other metrics. So helpful for everybody involved. The 2 links are right there in chat. So with that, let's take a look at the teams. We make up your governance team. So if you ever need support or have an issue, these are the people that are appropriate to back you up. You could tag us in Slack. If you ever are unsure who to tag or where to go to, feel free to loop me in and I can help steer you to the right person to help with your question. In Slack, there are several channels that can go to help you with communications or any questions or any topics you might want to flag. The 2 that are most commonly used are the Fill Plus channel with 2,100 members and the private Fill Plus notaries for any technical questions or notary specific issues. Just as a quick reminder, with Slack, sometimes the conversations can fork, sometimes the conversation can take a turn onto other topics. So Slack is very helpful for bubbling up questions, discussions, and issues, but it does a poor job of having a categorized history. So if there's an issue that you feel you'd like to have discussed or maybe have some more oversight on, making that issue a GitHub issue allows us to kind of link it to a notary or a storage provider or a member of the community, flag it for a working group to review, and then discuss on these calls. So again, Slack is really helpful for these quick conversations, but if it's a broad topic that you'd really like to dive into, if you make a GitHub issue first, we can then pull that GitHub into Slack for a discussion or keep it on GitHub. So GitHub is a really effective way, despite its limitations, to kind of have more transparency with this. So let's get into the notaries. So there were 3 Slack discussions that I saw come through over the past couple of days. I wanted to give a chance just to bubble these and make sure that these were on all of your radars as we as the government's team work through them. The first was flagged by Fei Yan in the Fill Plus channel, and it was a question about top off. So essentially they weren't seeing any data cap that was topped off. This is currently being investigated by DMOB. I know that we have Phil on the call. Phil, can you speak to this at all? Is this currently in process? Do we have a timeline on when this will be updated? I'm going to give him a quick pause. We'll go through. We'll come back. The second one was the Fil Plus website exports. Hitty, thank you for flagging this. This came through just today, and we flagged this for the teams. It's currently an investigation, and we'll have that back up and running as the update goes well. And the last was Banyan asking the question about sector size. So essentially, is it based off the payload and how does it work? Deep had a really detailed answer that I pretty much just plagiarized and put here for us. And essentially, it's going to round up to the nearest payload. So for example, if you had 17, it's going to round up to that 32-bit sector. So any other questions on these, feel free to flag for discussion. I'm going to pause for just one moment if anybody has any additional things that they'd like to ask or discuss. But these were some of the three that would impact everybody over the last week. Great. Here's the meat and potatoes part of it. So notaries, thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much for working with us on this increased transparency around disclosure forms and sanctions check. So over the past few weeks, we've been going through every application, every notary, and communicating with you over Slack, your GitHub, or email to try to run this down. And last Friday, Galen created issue 835. In this issue, we've essentially taken every notary that's completed all of their verifications in the registry, every notary that's completed their disclosure form, provided a first name, last name, a human, passed the sanction check, and Galen created this issue, which then adds you, it's going to be added to the multisig for new LDN signing. So the ask, if you look at this application and your name is not listed on here, or the ledger address is incorrect, please either comment directly in that GitHub application, or I'm going to press enter on a Slack message in the private notaries channel and use that thread to kind of get back to us. So this could be topics like, hey, I didn't have a first name, last name at the time, but now I do, or I changed my address. Again, what's happened is that these have forked in several places with DMs, so maybe we've missed it. Maybe you've done it in the last couple of days, but this will be the last week that we're allowing to kind of make these manual trade-offs. So I've worked with some of you, some of them aren't on the call. Very friendly reminder to please check that Slack and go forward. I see Galen has a hand up. Galen, floor is yours.
Awesome. Yes, I think the next slide is also talking about 836, but I just wanted to say again here, as Carrie just said, if you are a notary and there is a question or an address issue, please put it on this one, 835. This is sort of the proposal issue where we are keeping track of, this is like the record of who are the signers, why did we create this LDN v3.1 process, that sort of thing. So if there is a question about the structure of the multisig, put it in 835. Carrie, if you could click forward one for me, please. I'll just go ahead and keep rolling. 836 is the notary governance issue, and this is sort of the application for that LDN. So this is where the root key holders action, giving that multisig the data cap. So this one is really mostly just for our tooling and the different dashboard audits, but we want to keep the conversation off of this issue 836 because this one will get really noisy with a lot of bot comments back and forth as it's ready for a top up, it goes to the front end, the root key holders sign, that sort of thing. So again, just saying it one more time. If you have a problem with your address or a question about the structure of the multisig, the 3.1, put it in 835, issue 835. And again, just to highlight why we switched to this LDNV 3.1 instead of just keeping the same multisig notary. For a multisig, based on the implementation, you would need 2 of the signers to add every address, and you would be able to add an address one at a time. And we went from 30 to 80. So it would have just been a monumental time suck of people on that existing multisig proposing and approving to add one address at a time. We're actually talking about some FIPS to allow for some bulk multisig changes, bulk add signers. And we found a fun little Lotus bug where it will trim a message if the message is too long and run into an issue. So trying to create this multisig v3.1, it had an issue adding that many signers all at once. So anyway, that's why it's 3.1 and it's not 4.0. We didn't really structurally change how the logic of this multisig works. It's the same thing that we've been doing. There are admins listed on there. Those admins we have tracked in 835. They should be only making changes such as adding and removing signers. If a notary address changes, you no longer have access to your ledger wallet, that sort of thing. And then it has a list of those notaries that are on there. Those are the ones that should be using the front end to propose and approve, and not be making, administrative edits to the multisig itself. So this new v3.1 multisig, I checked it this morning before this call. On Lotus, it now has 50 pibs of data cap. So this new v3.1 is an active multisig notary. We're working with the Kiko team and the DMOB team to point our tools to this one. So all new LDNs, all new allocations from new LDNs should be coming from this 3.1 multisig, F02049 625. So as of now, the notaries that were listed out in 835, the new fourth round notaries, you are able to start going into the front end, signing in, seeing open application or LDN applications, and it will have a column for the notary that it's coming from. And if it ends in that 9625, you should be able to go do an audit, perform your diligence, track your diligence in the issue, and sign an allocation. All of the previously existing, there's something like 390 something open allocations. All the ones that do not already have a proposal, we're working with Kiko to roll those to this new one, 625. All the ones that already have one signature, so one of the previous V3 notaries signed it, those will stay on the V3 notary until they get their second signature, because we can't move that one proposal to a new notary. So we don't want to like orphan that proposal message. So there's kind of like three categories. There will be brand new LDN allocations. Those will come from 625. There are allocations that were kicked off to the V3 notary but did not yet get a signature. We will work on rolling those to 625 sometime in the next like week or two. And there are allocations that have one signature already from the previous V3. Those will stay on the previous V3 waiting for a second signature. So if you are a V3 notary, please go look for the ones that already have one signature, a proposal message. Go perform the diligence and see if it is safe enough to sign so that we can clear those, also because that client has been waiting for however long with one notary approval. There's some questions in the chat, but I don't know if they relevant. Let me just take a second and see if anyone else like raises a hand and has a question on this.
Yeah, Galen, there is a question relevant to this. Will V3 notaries be added to this V4 multisig?
So if you applied in the fourth election cycle and you were accepted, then you should be added to the LDN V3.1. If you applied in the third election cycle, but not the fourth, part of applying in the third election cycle is we won't remove you right away, but we won't add you to new tooling or new tooling changes. So if you were a third round notary and you did not apply in the fourth round and you did not complete the disclosures, you will not be added to the LDN V3.1. You will be on that LDN V3. Like I said, it has a few outstanding signatures ready and waiting for it. You will still have whatever remaining personal data cap you had for direct allocations. And that is your third round amount of power. And then, yes, Phil also corroborated that statement. Okay, other questions about the new LDN v3.1, why it exists, how it will work, who is on it, what the rollout is. No questions. All right, then if you are a fourth round notary and you have been saying, when can I start signing stuff? The answer is like this week. You should be able to start going into plus.fil.org, signing in, and looking for one's allocation request to 9625. And as long as you are opt into GitHub and you have selected your notary address that you gave us, then when you click on one of those little sections in the table, it will allow you to construct a proposal or approval message. If you do not have your correct address selected from the dropdown, then when you click on the table, it'll say you're not authorized to like sign this. So we have some like help videos about that. And again, if you run into problems with this, that is a great place where the Slack channels are really useful. For like K-Ray was talking about, that is a great type of troubleshooting. Take some screenshots, drop in those screenshots, ask questions about that implementation, and other notaries in the governance team can jump in. I don't see any other hands, so pass it back to you.
Hey, thanks for that, Galen. So one last foot stomp in 835. Take a look. If you're not on this, come to the private notaries channel. Phil and I will help you. All right, working group update. We have two big updates from RG coming from the Trust and Transparency Working Group. So RG, I see you on the call. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Gary. So I think the first issue that we wanted to talk about is issue 829, which is broadly talking about how do we want to formalize a code of conduct for trust and transparency. So far, we have a Slack channel that was created a couple of months ago, but I think the Filecoin Slack code of conduct is very broad, and it might not be enough for conversations around trust and transparency. And so right now, we are still in the discussion phase for the code of conduct. I think I checked the issue earlier today, and it seems like it hasn't received as much engagement as I was expecting to. So I just wanted to flag that here in the governance call. And so you might see that it says conclusion today, but I think we want a bit more time for everyone's input and opinion. So I'll be altering that today, and then ideally discuss this at the next TNT working group call. But if you are someone who would like to contribute to the code of conduct, please do so by contributing either to the discussion post, which is linked in the comment section of the issue, or if you think that we don't need a code of conduct, and if you feel otherwise, you can also engage with the issue itself by commenting on issue 829. Yeah, we can move to the next one, Carrie. And then we had another issue regarding addressing top of the funnel abuse. So this was coming from the fact that it's very easy for anyone to create new GitHub accounts and try to game the system by submitting many applications. And so the proposal here is to enforce KYC on GitHub accounts using a tool called Trulio. The challenge there is that Trulio is primarily serving B2B customers, and it wouldn't make sense for the governance team to essentially, accept money or accept data from the clients, because that violates the terms of decentralization. And so right now we are exploring ideas around how can we do this KYC. We have a few active community members who have used this tool in the backend, and they are using it. But they, to my knowledge, they've actually been paying themselves, which is, of course, out of their goodwill. And so moving forward, we want to kind of understand what are some ways in which we can enforce top of the funnel KYC, how useful it is, and how can we actually formalize this in a way that it does not violate the rules of Filecoin Plus or broadly, decentralization Web3, but also we can build trust within the Filecoin Plus program. So yeah, if you have suggestions around this, please again engage in this issue. And yes, we are very much open to startups or tools that you might be aware of that might be using ZK KYC, as someone just suggested in the comments. But yeah, we are very much open to that. And then this also directly aligns with some of the work that KZ has been doing with eFill Plus. So yeah, very open to suggestions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarji. We're going to open it up. If anybody on the call has any thoughts or discussion on this, this would be a great time to raise your hand. Young, I see your hand. The floor is yours.
Okay, I have one question. What kind of information is needed to do this KYC about this GitHub account, like ID card or passport?
Yeah, so I think right now, based on Trulio's, like what Trulio requires, they do require a government ID. And we are exploring if it would work for clients all over the world, especially in Asia. And so I think we're trying to separate KYB and KYC right now. With KYB, I think we've been using, eFill Plus has been using a tool called Synapse, which does verification of bank statements and things like that. But I think a simple email KYC has not proven to be enough so far. And so I guess the short answer is yes, there would be, if we use a tool like Trulio, that would require dependency on quote unquote Web2 IDs. But that's why I think we are very open to exploring Web3 solutions that might not require relying us on government IDs. So yeah.
Okay, but the Trulio is available in Asia countries?
We're still looking into it. We have a call set up with the account executives and the sales team at Trulio. So we want to understand that further. But from our research so far, it does seem like they can provide KYC for Asian clients.
Okay, great.
For what it's worth, I don't think we'd pick something that doesn't have that or doesn't have a clear
That's
path
true.
for everybody in the community. Yeah.
Young, I see your hand came back up. Did you have a follow-up question, or sounds like you're good to go? Anything comes up, please let us know.
No, it's just a mistake. I'm
That's
good.
great. You're good. All right. If there's any other topics or you guys want to discuss this further, we can move to the GitHub issue as we have it linked there, or we'll have time at the end to come back to this issue. So on to the proposal section of the call. We have 4 currently open proposals. A lot of those will be wrapping up in the next couple of days. So this is just one of those friendly reminders. If you haven't done so already, please come to the Notary Governance GitHub issue, and then under open, you'll see these 4. The first is staking. The second is auto closing of applications after 2 weeks. Issue 2.1 is how do we remove data cap? And then 829, the trust and transparency code of conduct that ties into issue 830. So again, we've talked about these on past calls. If there was anything that you wanted to flag, we'll save time on the community discussion for these. But again, this is the last call to go to those issues before they might move forward for anything else. And you can see all those links here in the deck if you want to grab into them. And at the end of this call, we'll save time if there's any alibis or any topics on those you wanted to kind of come back to. The 2 new issues that we wanted to flag on this call, we'll come back to RG for a summary on the per data set and what this means and what it will impact as far as the updates for future applications. RG.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, so this issue was opened by an active community member, and so we'll be discussing this in length at the next TNT working group call, but I just wanted to flag this here for others in the community to engage with, because it will impact a lot of clients who are applying for DataCap. And so the request is essentially enforcing per dataset applications, which essentially means that if a client is trying to store multiple datasets, they should open a different request for each dataset, which is a bit different from if you're applying for a dataset that is more than 5 PIBs. So I think there is a little bit of confusion that I've received in DMs. So the second thing, which is the second issue, which is about if the dataset is more than 5 PIBs, you do need to open multiple LDNs, multi-part LDNs right now, because we still haven't passed the issue regarding raising that limit. But this issue is specifically about separating the different datasets that a client is trying to apply for LDNs. And so there is some interesting conversation in the comments. We have both supporters and people who think that this might not be the right move. So I think we want to have more discussion on this. Also, just a general flag for anyone opening a new issue. It's very encouraged that you open new issues on GitHub, but please try to mention a timeline that you think is fit for an issue to be discussed, and then when you think we should reach a consensus, because I think that is super helpful for us, because we don't want to make that decision for you. But as of today, we are following a 2-week timeline. So because this issue was just open last week, we will give it another week unless the issue creator feels otherwise. But yeah, please engage in this issue, because this will impact many clients if this is passed. So yeah, just wanted to flag that here.
Thanks, RG. Since this was floated by some members on the call, if anybody who created this issue or already commented wanted to kind of share any thoughts or any additional feedback, great forum. The floor is yours for anybody that wants to comment or discuss.
I think Harisi might not be on the call today. They might join the evening call, so we can flag it again.
Appreciate that. We definitely will. Thank you for that, RG. Phil, I think the next one's coming to you, and this is the applications as JSON files. So Phil, if you're on the call, floor is yours.
Yeah, so hey guys. This proposal is basically a proposal to change the way we store LDN application data. Currently, how we do it is not the best way. What we do is we store all the information in comments, and a Keiko bot would scrape it, and that's how you see everything pop up in the Notary dashboard for you to sign, because Keiko is scraping GitHub for the comments, and we think that that's not the best way. So the proposed new method would be to have one JSON file with all the information inside. So now, instead of scraping all the comments, we're just looking at that one JSON file. How it will work is basically when a client will make a new application through fileplus.storage, and then what this would do is it immediately opens a new pull request, adding a JSON file to the instead of a new issue, it would just be a new JSON file with all the data of the client application. And then the Keiko tooling, whenever a new DataCap tranche needs to be deployed, the Keiko tooling would create a new PR to edit this JSON file. And then when two notaries sign, that PR, that pull request will be merged to the JSON file, editing it. And then information of the new DataCap allocation, like how much DataCap was allocated, the time it was allocated, the notaries who signed that allocation would be added to that JSON file. So instead of 2 comments saying approval and request, it would just be 1 entry in that JSON file update. So this does multiple things. First, it standardized the way we store the data, which is very useful for our backend, because Now, to analyze large amounts of data, it's very easy to query. Trust and transparency is better because now we have a history of all the commits. You can't just randomly delete files or randomly change stuff without history. It's much more reliable because now we don't have to scrape all these comments. That's what's leading to like the really high load time, and that's what's leading to all the inconsistent data. Sometimes you see like it's not being refilled, or like it's not being like your stuff is not being shown up on the registry, or it's taking a long time to load. So this would help those issues. So overall, I think it's a very good thing. For notaries, it should not change how you interact with the system. For clients, it will push you to apply through other websites such as fileplus.storage. But otherwise, which is, by the way, a cleaner way to do it. It's much easier. But otherwise, yeah, I think that's the main changes. If you have any thoughts or comments, please comment on that post. Good.
Galen?
Yeah, I would say that as Phil mentioned, like I think this is going to like really help and push us. And I will just call out that I think off the top of my head, I think the like thing we might lose is some of the like ease of readability. So one of the things right now is like when a new project, when a client opens like an issue or opens a new application, it opens an issue, you can land there and like read through it in like a human readable way to understand like what their project is. And then you can go back and forth in the comments, like asking questions. And so from a like diligence standpoint, like going into one issue and reading like what the application is a little bit easier. But that said, we are talking about ways to basically scrape out that JSON information and put it in the pull request as like a pull request kind of comment. And we're going to be experimenting with this. Like this is not a, if this gets approved, we're flipping the switch and we'll like make the change for everyone all at once. What we want to do is like get feedback on this before we start testing. So if you have ideas for the structure or what information needs to be kept, or you see any like blind spots, please like go into this issue and let us know, because what we're going to do is start testing this implementation where our plan is to like scrape some of the existing kind of open issues and closed issues, see how they would react to this like structure, and work on the flow. And then we'll have like more to pitch and present before we implement this. So at this point in time, like this is still a call for the community to like help us co-design this direction. Eric?
Yeah, I would like to double check with Phil. So if you make the JSON is like with the history per every application, can you just put the GitHub account history also including that JSON file? Because we can use the JSON file as a kind of the reputation system to approve the account ID or the previous also allocation information into that file. That will be more useful for both account ID and the applications.
So yeah, in what we have now is per LDN application, there will be or the current idea, per LDN application will have a new JSON file. And in that JSON file, we'll have all the information, GitHub ID, client address, everything. You were proposing history of, it has all the history of all the LDN of that LDN application. What other information did you want on it?
Yeah, the JSON file can combine the GitHub account with the wallet address together, so to approve all the history information, especially regarding to the account ID, which is some community members mentioned is just created a few days ago. So we call it a non-reputation account. So very familiar account will be more useful and get a higher reputation in our communities.
Yeah,
that is why.
I think yes, that is a piece of information that we could consider putting on the JSON file. Maybe like the date that the GitHub account was created, and things like that. But yeah, and I think that's something to consider putting on the JSON file. I'll actually note that down.
Go drop that in 839 and also look at the application schema that we're talking about, because one of the things that we have is data cap applicant, which is like the GitHub address for who is applying. It sounds like what you're talking about is let's also take that and do an analysis and say, well, how old or how many other issues, and can we turn that into a reputation score? And those are like really great comments and ideas. We do want to go in directions like that of having different reputation scores. And so this like switch to a JSON file is sort of a first step in having better data. So if you think there are other schema, like specific things that we need to capture, go like look at what we're capturing right now. Ask if you think we're capturing the things that you want us to. This proposal is not specifically calling out that we would do a reputation score and use that as a deterministic. But yes, if we want to like go in that direction, we should be tracking those kinds of variables.
Yeah, cool. I'll write down on the A39 above. Okay, thank you.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for that, Eric and Galen. Thank you for answering that. Great. Well, that kind of concludes the official format that we wanted to propose for any kind of discussions and topics. The next section we have is just open discussion. We have a community member who's on the line, Fsector, that has an update that they want to share. So I'm going to give them the floor first to kind of walk through what they're working on. And that'll save us around 15 minutes for any topics that we want to call or discuss or come back to. So Fsector, I saw you guys join. Thank you for coming. You guys have about 5 minutes. Would you like to share screen for your presentation or just talk?
PPT there.
If you could hear me, sorry to call you out. I hit that unmute participant. Oh. The floor is yours if you guys wanted to share with us this morning. You guys got 5 minutes, and if you want to share, you kick off.
Yes, can you hear me? Good.
Yes.
老师不，现在还不没有分屏吗
Okay, wait a minute. We are DC. Hello. We are DC level team. I'm gonna introduce our proposal in 3 pages. The first part, our system is DC automatic operation and maintenance management platform. That's our project introduction. The first page, we have 3 parts. Our aim is it's a one-stop service for Filecoin storage providers to realize automatic deployment, automatic management, reduce operation and maintenance costs, and improve operation converging efficiency. The second part, the problems we want to solve. Number 1, let me conclude in brief. Number 1, solve the problem of high demand for project deployment technical capabilities. Number 2, solve the problem of high storage costs. Number 3, solve the problem of fault warning and recovery. The third part, our service, we will provide Filecoin community members with the ability to use the platform for free during the development stage for the project. And the second page is a chart flow for how it works. This is the system, cross-regional system. You can see Singapore computer room, Hong Kong computer room, European computer room. It's a system. The product model is a platform pledgement model. The client is independently deployed and connected to the computer room and equipped through the network to realize automatic operation, maintenance, and management. The third page is for you how to use it. That's an automated operation, quick start. First step, you need to apply. Second step, deploy. Third step, get talking. Finally, you can use it. That's all. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I will write down and answer you. Our team can.
Thank you for that. Were there slides during your presentation? We could just see you, but it sounded like you might have some visuals. If you'd like, you could link the visuals in the GitHub presentation, and I'll put that in the next call. Or you could put the slides in the thread in the Phil Plus channel of Slack. That way everyone can see them as well.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Always excited to see community coming together to build stuff to make this network more robust and faster as we continue to onboard data. Thank you again for stepping up and sharing that presentation with us. Looking forward to it evolving as it goes forward. All right, we have exactly around 15 minutes left, so the floor is open. Any topics that are on mind, either the proposals that we've discussed, any communications in Slack, any conversations in GitHub, personal findings. This is a completely open forum for anything that might be on your mind of the community.
Hey, just a quick question. Are you guys in Denver right now?
Can you say that one more time, Kobe?
Yeah, are we in Denver?
Yeah, are you guys in Denver? Yeah.
Unfortunately, a bunch of us were not able to make it this time around because of scheduling things and other stuff going on. But RG is on his way today and should be there by tonight. So please hit him up. RG, I don't know if, where will you be? You're there, starting tonight till Friday, Thursday? Yeah, he's ready to take selfie.
Yeah, I'll be there until Sunday.
Nice.
But yeah, I'll be there at the FEM launch event tonight. So if you kind of want to say hi, and then, yeah, I think I'll try to wear something Phil Plus so that you can recognize me. But if you don't, I guess you can see my face now. So come find me and I'll be around.
Okay, is FVM launch at Hackerbase?
Yeah, it's happening. I think the official time might be 6:30 CST, but
okay.
Just check on the Hackerbase schedule. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be at Hackerbase soon. Like after a meeting, I'll go to Hackerbase.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you should go, and then you should definitely network with people. But yeah, I'll also come find you if I see you around.
Yeah, see you around.
Good question, Kobe. Thank you for that. All right. Well, with that, thank you for a very productive call. Lots of proposals, lots of updates coming. We'll see you in the Slack channels. And notaries, if you took one thing away from this call, amongst many others, it's please go check out issue 835 or look in the notary channel to verify that you're on that list. let us know if there's any complications, and we'll technically unblock you for the data cap this week. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you tonight, or have a great week.
Hello, and welcome to the second Notary Governance call of 2028. Let's take a look. So on this call, we have it broken into 4 categories. The first grouping will be updates for notaries. We'll be talking about some of the recent comms in Slack, highlighting updates to the Multisig, and just checking in with all of you during the onboarding process, which is wrapping this week. Then we're going to move into the second, which is a working group update from the Trust and Transparency. That might be Deep and I stepping in for RG if he's still occupied in East Denver. If he's able to join, he'll run us through some of the updates with the DAO work that they're doing and some proposal updates for the KYC. Third portion of the call, we're going to circle back to some of the proposals that are currently in flight, and we're going to talk about the 4 that are going to be wrapping up, give you guys an opportunity for any last thoughts or feedback on those, as well as talking about 2 new ones that are on the docket. If Phil's able to join, he'll speak to them. Otherwise, again, Deep and I will kind of highlight those for you. And then in the morning call, we have lots of time at the end for community discussions. We had an update from Fsector on a work in progress that they're doing. So this call will have lots of time for comments, thoughts, and discussions. And so with that, let's take a quick look. As always, we put the governance calls in the shared Google Calendar. If this is your first time, go check it out. The links are in Phil Plus channel if you want to see that as well. And the agenda is posted in GitHub. So if there's ever a topic that you'd like to see added, simply go to the GitHub, make an issue and say, hey, Kevin, I'd like to have XYZ added, and we'll reach out and we'll get that on the schedule for you as we go forward.
The SLA form that I'm putting in chat right now, you existing notaries, this is how we mark down for the leaderboard that will be rolling out shortly, as well as take into account for future elections. So if you're on the call now, it greatly behooves you just to fill out this form and say, hey, I was here. That way, in a few months, if you ever come back, we have some way to just show your participation in the community. So the form's right there in chat. If you have any questions, we'll have plenty of time to go over it, or feel free to message me on Slack. The governance team is made up of us, us being the folks on the call and on the line here on the slide. If you need any help, we all have kind of respective categories that we're slotting in to make sure that we're giving you the best support. And if you don't know who to reach out to for a question, always feel free to ping me, and I can always route you to the best person to help with any questions you may need. In Slack, we have several comm channels. The most frequent 2 for notaries is the Phil Plus. This is used for general topics, questions, and discussion, and the private notary channel for updates specific to only notaries. But again, we list them here. We have this all in the slide deck for review, but there's lots of avenues if you need to reach out for support or questions. So with that, one quick reminder, Slack is a very powerful tool for communicating, going back and forth. What it doesn't do well is provide a record of a conversation that we can action against. So it's great for questions. It's great for like looking for support or help. But if it comes to anything that you want to flag for like a more long-term discussion in the community, putting that in GitHub goes a long way. For GitHub, any issue that you make, I'll go through there and tag it, make sure that it has a home and owner, and help route that through, as well as add that to future governance proposals. So again, friendly reminder, if there's anything you wanted to flag, GitHub is a really effective way to make sure that that goes out to the community and we can give you the best support as it goes forward. So with that, let's take a look at some of the notary outer boards. The first thing to kind of flag is there were 3 conversations in Slack that were taking place over the last week, just bubbling these up so that we had just this on your radar in case you had any questions as this went through. The first was the top off question, like, hey, when will this address be topped off? This got asked by Faye Ann in the Phil Plus channel. They are currently investigating with DMOB. This came up on the call today. I see that Phil just joined the call. Phil, sorry to put you on the spot 10 seconds after you joined, but I'm hoping maybe you might be able to give us a quick update on what happened with that DMOB conversation with the top off question, if you're able.
Right. Got it. So DMOB notified me that it should be okay. This is the top up bug you're talking about, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it should be working now. If you still have any errors, just ping me, and I'll relay it. But it was basically a bug between Keiko and DMOB, and it was because of a few things. We recently migrated to another URL, and because of that, there was some problem with like the API key that Keiko was using. to figure out whether to top up your LDN application. So they weren't detecting whether to top up your LDN application, and that was a problem. And so now it should be fixed. Just let me know if it's still broken.
Appreciate that. Phil, since you're unmuted, would you mind checking in on the Phil Plus export issue that Hitty flagged early this morning?
Got it. Okay. Well,
oh, I'm sorry. Did we have any updates that came from that sync earlier?
I believe not for the Hitty export thing. Or it could be the same thing, or yeah, that we're referring to here.
No
Is
problem.
The discussion on GitHub or Slack?
This came through on Slack. You might have seen this in the Phil Plus channel. Just wanted to bubble this up while we had kind of the community for any other issues. But essentially what Hitty was flagging was that the export side wasn't allowing any exports to go through. So we have a contracting team that we meet with on Tuesday morning. I was prepping for this call and not on it. We'll run down the answers for you guys and make sure that that Slack conversation gets updated. The second or third, excuse me, was sector size. This came through a few days from Banyan. Good flag. And what they were trying to figure out is if you're uploading data and it comes through, does the program have like a payload pad that goes into it? Deep answered this, and so I kind of pulled his answer and just bubbled this up for everybody. Essentially, if you're uploading 17 gigs, the way that this will parse is it will essentially double that to the roundest number, which will come out to 32 as we put that in there, and that will result. So if you're curious to kind of see this thread's in Slack. Good conversation, good bubble up. Just wanted to make sure that we gave these a voice and kind of bubbled them for everybody to know. I'm going to pause here and see if anybody has any questions on these three issues. Just throw a hand up. We'll be happy to look. All right, straightforward stuff. We'll get to the good stuff. So notaries, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been really a lot of disclosure docs and ledger verifications, and I think we're reaching that finalization. So on Friday, Galen and Deep sat down and we went through this all. And what we did was we created a brand new multisig. We'll talk about in the next issue. But in issue 835 in GitHub, what we essentially did was took all of the notaries that have completed their disclosure, completed their verification in the registry, and done a completed sanctions background check. And we compiled all those and we put that on this list that you see in issue 835. So the ask, if you are a notary and you are not on this 835 issue, you don't see your name or your address, that means that something got lost in comms. So check your Slack with me, reach out. The best way to make sure that we get you immediate help is comments in that 835 issue. Like, hey, Kevin, I thought I had everything good, but I don't see my name on this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to circle back with that, as well as a final ping to anybody who had not completed their disclosure form or completed their registry. I also started a thread in the private notaries channel. So respond to that thread. This will help all of us keep eyes on and get you plugged in. What we're going to do is circle back a couple days and manually add. But this is really that final window. If you miss this, it's going to be a really difficult process to get you on. But saying that everybody on this call is participating, I don't anticipate that for a few people that might have dropped off. So the main ask with this is if you don't see your name on 835 and you are a fourth round notary, you will not receive data cap. Please comment on that issue and we'll come back and help. You'll also see issue 836. Galen created this, and what this is essentially a brand new multi-sig. So when we had the third round of elections, we rolled out this multi-sig, which allows for multi-application signing. We called it LDN v3. This is LDN 3.1. And what this allows to do is now it's supporting multiple addresses on that chain, and this is what's going to enable that data cap to flow out. So the big update for everybody on the call is because this was a tech improvement and this was a brand new onboarding process for everybody coming on board, any third round notaries will not be added to this new multi-sig. They'll still remain their signing privileges, but they're not put onto this new tech improvement, which is why highlighting and participating in these new disclosure forms and updates allows you to kind of onboard onto these new tech as they roll out. So we had some questions from this in the morning from some third round notaries who did not reapply in the fourth round. I've been in cons with them today. So if you're a third round notary and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll work with you. Fourth round, automatic, all of you that applied, were accepted, and have been onboarded will automatically be set up for this. I'll pause and see if anybody has questions on getting added to the multisig or how this process works. Too cool for school. All right, with that, we're going to launch into the working groups. Since hearing my own voice might get off, Simon, Phil, Deep, would any of you guys like to highlight for RG? Otherwise, I'll be happy to kind of step in. I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, I totally could care if you want a quick break. RG's on his way to Denver right now for Eat Denver. So if there's anybody on this call that's in Denver, send him a friendly hello and see if you can catch up with him in person while you're there. Speaking for him, obviously I can't cover to the level of detail that he could, but please check out the recording from the morning session if you'd like to hear him talk through this. Main things that are worth calling out: trust and transparency working group, chugging along on a bunch of different interesting open topics. One of the things that he's been thinking about working through is separating and building a TNT specific community code of conduct. And this is really interesting because as people flag potential abuse and come up with things that they want to double click on in the Phil Plus community, there's obviously a way in which we can facilitate that conversation in a more productive way. And so having like a dedicated code of conduct to keep things productive and moving forward in a positive way would be important. And so the intent is to effectively levy a mechanism by which like people flagging potential audit or abuse and desire to explore potential cases where we need to investigate or create potential disputes should be done in adherence to like an actual code of conduct. And so ideally we have something like that, and we can also have actual follow-up based on that when people step out of line in order to continue making sure that the community is moving forward in a productive way. We've seen a lot of things pop up, let's say, in Slack mostly over the last couple of weeks that are very much like towing the line from lots of different people. And so as we continue to call those out individually, it sounded like this might be a pretty good idea. Kira, anything you want to add on this?
No ads for me. I appreciate you stepping in. This also ties back to issue 830, which you'll see if you look. So lots of updates. I appreciate the time. And Deep, thank you for coming into step. Deep, would you feel comfortable to talk about the updates around the next one, the KYC update?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So one of the other things that we've been looking into is the fact that people can add and remove GitHub accounts for free. And there's a lot of finger pointing coming into play where it's like, oh, this is a brand new GitHub account. There's no historicity to this account. We don't know whether or not to take this seriously. GitHub accounts are obviously free to create as long as you have an email address. But finding a way in which we can ensure that it actually links back to a human or an entity organization that is useful in a way to help provide some sort of baseline reputation to ensure the application is taken more seriously by notaries and they know that they're dealing with somebody at the end of the day rather than just somebody spam making a bunch of accounts is a useful and valuable thing. And so the TNT working group has identified a tool called Trulio, which so far seems to be a pretty good option of doing third-party KYC checks linked to GitHub accounts, and seems to be pretty good coverage from like global standpoint. So I think every country pretty much that we have somebody in the community and should have coverage through this platform. And if not, then obviously, the desire would be to find a different platform. But the idea is that there should be some way to ensure that there's a human behind every single GitHub account so that when new applications come in, they are flagged as coming from a GitHub account that is owned by somebody that is actually trying to do something with that account. Alex?
Yes. So is this for LDN only or for every kind of application?
Great question. So I think the
you're muted, but go on.
I was just saying TNT working group, I think, is working through the details, but I would imagine that this could come into place for everything. I think the initial proposal, though, was for LDN applications that are coming in directly. It's issues. I personally think we could apply it across the board, right? Like anybody applying theoretically should be applying from a GitHub account that has done like a super basic like checkbox, like, yes, I'm a human.
So my concern here is that, yeah, I agree with the GitHub stuff, but I'm not sure about the KYC because I could be applying, trying to get data cap for whatever reason, and the KYC process can be something that, I don't know, it may be not so so open or so fair or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
I would suggest that we keep this for LDN if possible.
Yeah, I think it is scope right now just for LDN. And for what it's worth, Alex, I'd say take a look at the Trulio tool and see. It seems like a relatively lightweight thing. Either way, just we could always try it, and if it really does suck or slow things down a lot, I think all of these decisions are pretty reversible. The idea is that it reduces the ease of like just spam pinging or automating applications and just generating a bunch of noise. It's very easy to do that today as well, and so we want to ensure that we're able to find a way to mitigate the traffic coming to notaries so as to ensure that their time is being spent in the best way possible.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try adding some comments in that issue as well.
Thanks, Alex.
Yep.
Wonderful. Appreciate that. Deep, I just saw that Mr. John Denver himself, RG, joined the call. RG, you're probably just head deep in a conference, but if there's anything you want to add, feel free to unmute and we'll. I'm going to take that silence as that you're out there taking names and kicking rears. All right, if there's any questions, this will be up in the transparency group. This is issue 833 and 829. They're linked here in chat as well as the deck. So thanks for that. All right, the next portion of the call we dedicated to the proposals. And what's nice is that as we start to grow really quickly, proposals are a great way that we make sure that everybody's feedback is heard, incorporated, and discussed in an open forum. So ideally, nothing's happening in a black box. So anything that's coming through as a change, we make these proposals. You can make them as well. I'll go through and make sure that they get the voice as always. So with that, there's 4 proposals that we've talked about over the last 2 calls. Rather than regurgitating that and spending time us talking about it, at the end of this call, we'll have time in the open discussion. So if any of these issues were still on your mind or you wanted to flag them or you've read some of the comments over the past few days and you want to discuss, there'll be plenty of time at the end of this call. But the 4 open proposals that we're getting ready to close out is 1, the staking consideration, 2, the auto close after 2 weeks, 3, what is the process for data removal if anybody violates, and that trust and transparency code of conduct that we just talked about with the working group. So to find these, just go into GitHub. They're in the Notary Governance repo. You'll see all of those proposals listed. If you're new to the community and you don't know where to find these, find me in Slack, send me a message. I'll be happy to link you and point you through it. So again, these will close out soon. This is like a last call. And at the end of this, during discussion, if you have any feedback, we'll talk about it. There are 2 new proposals. Alexander, if you don't mind, what we'll do is we'll wait till the end. Yeah, love it. There are 2 new proposals that just came through. And I think since RG might be out, there is 2 that come down with the data set. I could talk about the data set. Simon, if you want to step into this, or Phil, we'll just do a 10-second unmute. If you unmute and go, otherwise I'll cover it. All right. So feel free to interrupt. Oh, Dave. Oh, I thought I shot.
No, go, Carrie, go. Thank you. Your voice is so much better. Do it.
Whatevs, you sneaky guy. All right, so essentially 832, this was a community issue. And what this is essentially saying is if you have a very large, diverse data set, it doesn't always make sense to have many applications. But if you might have a data set that's kind of coming from the same source or comes from the same program, why are we not having that individual? So it's really coming down to, are we splitting these applications up into multiple that can be segmented and reviewed? Or are we just onboarding massive amounts of data, a one-time check on it, and then going forward? So what this is trying to do is limit the potential for abuse, as you see in the call out, open up that transparency, and then spread this across. That way, if we have this data set that comes through, it doesn't just have this one massive application. We might be able to chunk this off and really look at it. So again, this was filed from the community, a great way to kind of make this program a little bit more open and transparent. The issue is linked there, 832. Since this is a new proposal, we'll kind of open this up for any thoughts feedback or discussion.
Hey, Kevin, just to be clear, proposal here is trying to slice the data sets up.
No, Mark,
You're
really
muted.
good question, and thanks for clarifying that. So no, it's not cutting the data set out. If you look here under the issues, it's mostly merge requests. So when we get these two merge requests that come through and asking for data set, you got it. So getting that out. So no, that might have just been a poor communication on my part. It's not like we have to separate every terabyte out, but it's just these merge requests, giving them the whole separate review as we go through. Thanks for asking that, Mark.
It's also because we're seeing like a lot of applications that are combining different types of data sets from different sets of data owners and data types. And it's making it really hard to like blanket a notary opinion across the entire set. And so obviously the more granular you get, the more specific a notary decision can be. But then that also comes with a trade-off of like operational overhead and not being able to prioritize small data sets and stuff. And so there's already a ton of chatter on this issue. A lot of like onboarders of open data sets have shared a bunch of their thoughts. Like me personally, I also think that this doesn't work in every single case. And so I've suggested narrowing the scope, in which cases we actually apply something like this. So I would definitely encourage that you take a look at 832 and see if there's anything you'd like to add. Danny, you have a hand, go for it.
Actually, I hadn't seen this, so I'm going to spend some time looking at it because I have some thoughts, but I'm sure other people have come up with them before.
I'm sure your thoughts will be greatly appreciated in the issue.
All right. The next application we have is 839. Phil, if you're on the call, I'll turn the floor over to you, bud.
Yep. So this proposal is won't change anything for notaries. It will make things faster for you guys, hopefully. The idea is to change the way we store GitHub issues. Currently, what we're doing is we're storing LDN application data, so data about the tranches and which notary is signing, all that is stored as comments on GitHub. So right now what happens is when a notary proposes or approves of a data cap tranche, it sets as 2 comments on the GitHub issue. And that's difficult because now whenever Keiko wants to load your LDN application on the notary dashboard, they have to scrape GitHub, which is not efficient, right? So the proposed change is to have everything as one JSON file. So how this flow would work is when a client applies, it opens the JSON file with all the information of the LDN application. And then whenever two notaries sign to allocate new data cap to this LDN application, this file is edited and extended. So instead of scraping multiple comments, we're just taking this file and reading from this file, and it has all the information for each LDN application. So there's many things that it helps. First, it standardizes things. So now we can have multiple websites. For example, if right now we have fillplus.storage that Simon created, and that clients can enter information through there, and it can be stored as a JSON file. And then also for trust and transparency purposes, it's really difficult to just delete a comment in the past without any history of it, since we're editing everything through pull requests. And then it's also much more reliable since we're not scraping through comments. So there'll be much less glitches and much less inconsistent data. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. Sorry if I missed it, but so the JSON would be updated from a pull request or from, so we have we have the file, and then everything that changes that file. We have a single JSON for every application that lists like each application, or we have one JSON file for each application.
So sorry, let me clarify the flow. So client makes a new application through filplus.storage website. Then a new JSON file is, a PR is made, a new JSON file is added to the LDN repo, right? With all the information of this LDN application that the client filled out. And then a new PR is opened whenever a new data cap tranche is going to be allocated. So a PR is opened, notaries will sign through the normal notary registry, right? And then Keiko will, the tooling is responsible for doing the PR and the merge of that data cap tranche. So it edits the JSON file to make it a bit longer. And the new information on that JSON file is going to be the new tranche that is allocated to this LDN application. So it's not one big JSON file for everything. It's per LDN application, there's one JSON file with all the history for that LDN application. Or at least that's what we plan now. We're still in ideation phase. So if you guys want to read it, and I put the schema there and everything. And if you have other thoughts or you think it needs to be edited, just reach out to me or comment on this. Danny has raised his hand.
What do we anticipate being the source of truth for this? Is this the one and only place that we think that this is the canonical data, or is that on GitHub, or is that on chain, or where does it live?
Right now, information lives on GitHub as comments, right? So now we're just changing that information from comments to JSON files.
Yeah. So the JSON, in the event of a dispute, in the event of things like people arguing about this, we say the JSON file is what truly happened.
That, and I guess there's also on chain, you can check like the transaction, right? That message.
Right.
So those are the two things. Obviously, the CID for the transaction message would be stored on this JSON file. So whenever a data cap is issued, like there's gonna be a new record on that LDN application.
But can we create everything that's in this JSON file from on chain?
No.
Okay. So so this would, I guess, right, as you say, right now we do it on GitHub. We'll be mirroring some of this information to GitHub as comments. Am I right?
No. Right now it's on GitHub as comments.
Right. If we switch to this, we would still be outputting like what's happening here.
Yes. Or could you repeat?
Hold on one sec, Danny. Can I take a stab at this real quick? Okay, so there's a set of things that are generated as part of like the application lifecycle, let's say, of a Filecoin Plus data cap application that will never end up on chain, unless somebody were to like store them on chain, right? Like artificially, effectively. And so that flow today is basically somebody opens up an issue, a bunch of people comment on it. We've got tooling that comes in and comments on it, and then that issue basically just gets really, really, really long, and then one day it gets closed.
Right.
This is basically an alternative to that, where instead of it being one really long living issue, you actually have a representation of that exact same thing, but in code. And so every time a new allocation comes in, instead of it being, oh, subsequent allocation bot opened up a comment, notaries got pinged, it's a new PR opened up that suggested how much data cap should be granted.
Right.
Notaries can have the same conversation, the same back and forth, the same CID checker stuff runs, all that runs, but instead of it being a thing in GitHub that's open for the lifecycle of a whole application, it's now a thing in GitHub that's open for the lifecycle of an individual tranche in the LDN flow. And then that gets documented into this thing, because then effectively, instead of like somebody building an analytics tool now, instead of scraping through a bunch of random comments in GitHub, gets to now just look at this file and scrape it all in like a well-structured, schematized format.
Right. And I guess I was just clarifying that we're moving right now, the issue is the single point of truth, right? And now we're going to move the point of truth to to a JSON file that we're doing pull requests on, and that's the thing that reflects what we're actually
Yes.
doing.
For the stuff that's not going to end up on chain. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. It's just like we don't want to be in a situation where we now are supporting two views on the same thing, and we don't know which one of them has priority. So that's
agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we actually have after this we will have 3 points of data sources. The issues that we still gotta scrape and do whatever because it's history. The pull requests and the file, which are from this new proposal, and the on-chain data that is related to the data cap and whatnot. So we would have these 3, and I guess what we are doing from this proposal is deprecating the issues and only using files and the pull requests for that file as the source for decisions made off chain. So we would then have decisions made on chain on actually allocating data cap and whatnot that's on chain, decisions made on approving, and those other decisions from the governance are right now in issues, but that's going to be deprecated and moved to pull requests to the file actually. But I guess we still have some discussions on the pull requests. So
yeah, I think we had 3 and we're still going to have 3, Alex. It's just that like the first 2, the non-chain ones, they end up being way more reliably preserved than in the current format. And so the scrapability and the analytics is way higher, the trustworthiness is way higher, the reliability is way higher. But the risks during an open thing are effectively similar. I think the only other big upside we have here is basically when there's an issue, like issues are very easily deleted. There's like no concept of like archiving and things like that. PRs, you can always go back and override something, but you always maintain the commit history. And so just even from like a long-term back and forth management standpoint and like tracking updates over time, way more auditable, way more transparency. It's, GitHub is not a natural fit for what we're doing, but it still continues to be one of the best tools that's available to us. And so we're like re-optimizing a little bit on how we're using it.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this because this goes as well into another discussion we had some of the past meetings about having backups and a method of actually not relying so much on GitHub. So having a file, actually you can just git clone and you're good to go, except from the pull requests and whatnot. But from the
that's easy though. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great, awesome.
Great input, guys. This will be open for a while, so if you've had a chance to review this after the call, feel free to come in, like, emoji, leave comments, and we'll move forward based off your input. Go and do it. Sweet. That kind of concludes all new business with the stunning 25 minutes on the call. So this is now completely our time, your time, anything that's top of mind, whether it's the election, onboarding, these proposals, anything with the community, raise a hand. The floor is yours.
I have a really quick question, which is just if I've been very remiss and I haven't joined the working groups. If I wanted to join the working groups, what is the best way of joining the working groups?
That is a great question. So there are 2 working groups. One is Enterprise Fil Plus, which is led by KZ. The second is Trust and Transparency, led by RG. They both have Slack channels. I will quickly, once I finish talking, link those here in chat. If you go to those Slack, cleverly, they have pinned in the top of the Slack bars all of the information for joining. So KZ created a form that you could fill out. RG has separate meetings that run concurrent to this time every other Tuesday. Great question. I'll link it here in the chat for us to get it. Thanks, Danny. Yeah, Mark, floor is yours.
So I've been reading about this proposal. Sorry, I'm just going to pull up the number. The capped duration multiplier. This proposal is going to have a fairly big impact, I think, on Filecoin Plus. I think I'm hoping people here have read it and had a look at it, and I was just wondering if anyone's got any comments. And I feel like this is maybe the reason I'm interested in this, because I feel like over the last couple of weeks I've been looking at a lot more applications, and I've maybe been dissatisfied with them meeting the rules, but maybe not the principles of Filecoin Plus. And I think a proposal like this is a roundabout way trying to minimize how much of an impact Filecoin Plus has. And I think that's a reflection of kind of a little bit of what's been going through Filecoin Plus recently. So it's more just seeing what other people's thoughts on this proposal are at the moment.
I have a bunch of thoughts, but I'll hold. And I want to see if anybody else has anything they'd like to add first before I dominate.
For those that don't know what I'm talking about, it's the discussion 636. I'm just trying to find it.
I dropped a link in the chat. I guess that's the one, right?
Yeah, thanks. That's the one.
I guess you can go on for domination.
Deep sea, no community input. I think we'd all like to kind of hear your thoughts just to kind of keep the conversation up.
Totally. Honestly, I'm a pretty big fan of the way some of the things that are being brought up in this proposal might be of use, as well as how they could positively impact like the current macroeconomic condition within the Filecoin Island economy. And on net, I am supportive of this as a proposal. Mark, I think it's a relatively good one. It has some good ideas baked into it. Extension of max deal terms is really interesting. The ability for a storage provider to self-select into different types of roles in the network is also really interesting. Like creating like a stakeholder type effectively within the SP classification, where you have like an SP that's like dedicated to be here to serve storage versus an SP that's dedicated for like securing the network, or just is interested in running FEM contracts and things like that. Like there is a role for that person, and I think this proposal really highlights that like Filecoin started out as a network very focused on storage, but with FEM and the amount of hardware that's been dedicated to it, there's a lot of different directions it can go in, and it's pretty flexible when it comes to that. And so we should be able to leverage those things. I've seen a couple of comments come up on the Phil Plus side too, ranging from like reasonable criticisms to unnecessarily disparaging without any useful or productive follow-up. But all of them, honestly, fair game. Like it's totally reasonable, I think, to flag it. My personal opinion is that I think it's a bit of a straw man fallacy to like pursue this as like a adjustment to the usefulness of Phil Plus in the network. I think the proposal like stands for a lot more than that. But yes, I do think one of the externalities of it is that like the relative usefulness as perceived today for like QAP gain through verified deals will decrease slightly. But I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. So I think firstly, a bunch of people are forgetting that to even come close to that like QAP adjustment, you're looking at somebody doing CC for 10 years plus, which is an incredible thing from like a hardware commitment standpoint to the network. And a lot of people are forgetting that. And that's huge, right? Like today we're talking about 1.5 year deals, and at the same time, we're talking about 1.5 year CC sectors or 6 month CC sectors even. And all of a sudden the game changes to saying, hey, baseline goes from 6 month CC sector to like a 10 year CC sector. The second thing that I think is really interesting is with the way the macroeconomic condition has moved in Filecoin. It's no secret today, right, that like the way storage provider business models are set up, they're disproportionately reliant on verified deals today. Part of that is because people are still exploring and using Fil Plus as a way to experiment cheaply to figure out like what kind of demand they want to serve and what kind of business development they want to do. But a much larger part of it is the way in which like the token has moved alongside the rest of like the crypto macroeconomic cycles relative to fiat investments, right? Like people are buying hardware in fiat and then earning returns in crypto. And if crypto slides against fiat, then your return profile looks worse, your ROI looks worse. And one of the things that I think has happened with the Fil token price reducing over the last several months has been the pressure on people to really do business development and push through as much as they can through verified deals has gone up substantively. And so though we've also had like significant scale in Fil Plus, and a lot of it's been really good, like we've seen some really nice hero scenarios of like teams like Seal coming by other SPs really stepping it up when it comes to like business development in different regions in the world. We've also seen SPs get really pressured into finding ways in which they could cheaply scale up their QAP because that's the only way for them to make like a positive ROI return, right? And so one of the reasons I like this proposal is that I think it eases the pressure a little bit. Like if you're an SP and you really don't care that much about serving deals, like why should you, continue to make like a notary's life harder and or your own life harder and trying to find ways to gamify the system when you could just go with like CLCC sectors for 10 years. And I think that that's a tremendous upside. And, keeping deal terms flexible also then means like SPs that are trying to onboard enterprise data can now start creating like, sales orders, purchase orders for clients like down the line with actual like dollar amounts tagged to them and start to build like business models that are not just reliant on a network subsidy. So yeah, if the CDM proposal goes through, do I expect that like deal onboarding, verified versus unverified will change? Probably not. I still think a majority of like all deals will be verified deals. But do I think as many verified deals will happen or as much like throughput will be required? No. I think that like the pressure will ease off. Definitely think SPs that are more interested in just doing CC will have an opportunity to be able to much more like justify that, whether that's to their own investors or to where they're getting their collateral loans, et cetera. And so honestly, I see it as a relatively positive thing. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think I agree with you that the pressure from the SP's perspective and therefore the pressure on notaries and File Plus should ease. I guess one thing is like some of the applications I've been looking at is like it's very questionable whether they meet, in my mind, the Filecoin principles. And I've got one here that I can talk to, but I disagree with it, but another notary has jumped on and approved it. And I guess there's like, as we bring on more notaries, like getting on the same page of this is like really hard if that pressure remains. And if you're saying like, well, you'll still see a lot of Filecoin Plus deals coming through. I guess I sit there and go, well, unless we're on the same page, it doesn't really, it's less effective.
Yeah, I completely see where you're coming from. I just think that that's like a conversation we should be having regardless of whether or not this was a proposal. And it's just straight up orthogonal to like the FIP discussion, right? Like if we should be raising the bar for like what notaries are signing, we should be raising the bar for what kind of clients make it through the FIP Plus application process. Whether or not CDM is a FIP actually doesn't influence that much at all. Like we should all be here trying to reduce the amount of potential abuse in the system and like targeting a higher quality of data being served in the Filecoin network. And given that obviously, we can't check all data, it turns into higher quality of clients being served in the network. And so I think that like one of the good outcomes of this like CDM thing is that it is bringing a lot more people into the conversation, and like there's a lot more renewed interest in this conversation. Like there was a big sort of burst of energy in this direction in January, and we started pushing a bunch of stuff through. We're still pushing a bunch of stuff through, but some of the conversation has waned a tiny bit, and now there's a little bit of a resurgence, and so that's been really good. I think we should continue having that conversation. There's a bunch of like discussion topics that have been opened up over the last 6 weeks or so that address this like relatively head on. There's a bunch of open threads in Slack itself. Ideally, we start to move them into the same discussions in GitHub. And so, Mark, if you have specific applications that you're like, why was this signed? I would just say literally the first thing you should have done is commented the application and said, why was this signed? Like, I think it's completely reasonable for you to hold another notary accountable and ask them like what gave them the confidence to do that, because that's the only way in which like we can actually have this tide rise together. And I just think that's like, I hope you understand where I'm coming from when I say it's orthogonal to the CDM thing, because I don't also want to tie that energy to the CDM thing, right? Like say the CDM thing drastically changes over the course of like what we learned from the modeling, or people don't like it, or people really like it, or it gets passed or it doesn't get passed. Like I don't care that much, because we still have to do exactly what you're describing. And so we should be doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Not to say it's good or not a good proposal.
Yeah. I think what I meant is I feel it's a bit of a result or reflection of maybe us not having that high quality coming through, or at least your words, like the pressure, the bottleneck coming towards Filecoin Plus at the moment because of the Filecoin.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's totally right. Yeah.
And maybe just a quick follow up. Sorry, this will be my last question. But so, okay, I've got a scenario here that I disagree with them, right? But they can still approve. So ultimately, an applicant just needs to find one notary amongst everyone that will approve.
Well, if they're coming through the direct allocation process, yep, just one. If they're coming through LDN, then 4. But yeah, that's the point of having like a rubric that is also open to discussion, and like a process by which we can call people out and track them like publicly, and start to build a notion of like notary reputation. I think we're already reaching the point where like notaries are effectively no longer serving as like effective notaries in some cases. I used the word effectively twice there in different ways, but adjusting who actually has that right. Like it is a very important role in the network that comes with a decent amount of responsibility. And so it should also, have repercussions when things aren't going well. And that's kind of the point of like signing up a trust and transparency working group, where you see people like specifically calling out individual notaries. Those discussion threads that were kicked off by Hida and many other community members, but then also like formalized through the TNT working group, like 825, 811, stuff like that, where there's like specific notaries being put on blast. It's a really good example of this. And I think it's completely reasonable to continue doing that. Like, no one's forcing anyone to be a notary here. If you got elected because you chose to set a bar for yourself, if you're no longer upholding that bar, it's reasonable for us as a community to decide that person shouldn't have that right anymore, or shouldn't have that ability anymore, because it frankly is a pretty powerful position to be in the network. And so, yes, everything you're saying is accurate. Let's do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just commenting that I guess one of the hard things here would be to figure out incentives to do this investigation, or commenting on applications that they don't agree with, because that has a cost. And if anyone really wants the application to go through, they can just comment forever, and until the other side just stops trying to do the right thing. So I guess that's one of the challenges, and I think this may be one of the things that the transparency now or something like that can.
Yeah. So I think Phil has an open discussion topic on like introducing like potential concepts around staking and collateral, for like in addition to just reputation, to give people like the right, or actually RG might have opened it up, but around like having the right to put somebody on blast like that should also come with some sort of responsibility and incentive tie-in. that's one thing for sure. The other thing is also that I would say, Alex, we're actually seeing the cost literally right now of like this, which is if you have a community where people aren't willing to hold each other to a really high standard, we don't maintain a really high standard. And then what we end up with is a bunch of people being like, oh, this community isn't seemingly doing what we expected them to be doing, and we need to course correct. And we're watching that play out right now, to Mark's point. And I think that's fine. Like, it's a good thing. We have plenty of flexibility here and a very engaged audience. And so I think we're in a very good position to continue evolving as needed.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, I feel that maybe we need to start looking at these as like R&D type grants opposed to just verified client data. Like, to talk to one I saw the other day, it's open data sets because they're social media videos. And it's like, okay, well, yes, it's open, but that just looks like private data that doesn't need to be encrypted. And so if you go back to like the principle of Filecoin Plus, it's like accelerating the usefulness and attractiveness of Filecoin. And I think there's possibly a fair few coming through that maybe missed the mark there, but that's my view, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to objectively make that call. I think it's very easy to subjectively make that call, and we can continue arguing about it. I think objectively, ultimately, what it really comes down to is like minimizing false positives of identification of like trustworthy clients effectively. Right? The cases where somebody is just like purely BSing the system, that's really, I think, the first thing we need to clamp down on, and that should be the priority. And that means objective measures like looking at how people behave on chain, and then starting to build like notary opinion on how we do effectively like some measure of reputation or some measure of like what is considered compliance with like good actions or good policy is really the direction we're going in. The CID checker tool is like the first step in this direction effectively, which is to say, hey, if somebody's saying they're making 5 replicas of something, we should be able to look at the network and see that 5 CIDs were stored across 5 SPIDs from that client address. And if we don't, then it sounds like they're not doing that, right? And that's like super objective. And so I'd say like the bar for cutting that out is way lower, and the effectiveness of cutting that stuff out is also extremely high. And I think that a lot of people abusing the system today are doing it in a relatively lazy way. And so as long as we can start to cut that out, I think we can move towards more of those like existential and scope oriented conversations. I think the time is also right, as we get some of those tools out, to look at that QAP multiplier change thing too. I've been meaning to have this discussion for a while. You flagged it a couple of times, Mark, which is like, hey, certain types of stuff being onboarded are arguably more or less valuable for the rest of the world than others. Why aren't we considering having like, a 10x versus a 5x versus a 15x? And I think those are all possibilities as well. But I think we need to take care of the low hanging fruit before we can seriously put attention in that direction as a community.
Yeah, no doubt it's these things take a little bit of time to get right, and it affects so many people. But thanks for the comments.
Mark, really good topic, obviously. Thanks for bringing that up and helping kick that off. We have about 2 minutes left. This is just kind of last alibi. If there's anything else on anybody's mind, we have time for about one more question. Darlene, I see your hand. The floor is yours.
Kevin. Hello, guys. Because I didn't come from a technical background, I was also rethinking my work. And I was thinking, what non-technical contribution can I make to help the community? But we also have a team and the technical problems are solved by them. I currently organize the OP conference, and I'm attending the ESPA, checking the application carefully and sign my name. So do you have any other suggestions to a new notary? What I think I can do is maintaining the community, coordinate problems, create posters, to help Filecoin and host offline events to promote Filecoin.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I love everything about that. One other thing that I would add, I'm also not technical, at least since I joined this company and I see how brilliant everybody else is. I'm just programming a VCR. But one thing that's helpful too as a non-technical is when you're looking at some of the LDN applications, sometimes it's nice to not have a technical eye. And Sunny does a really good job of this, of just responding to an application, like with general questions that would help you understand, like how is their data being stored? Where is it stored? How does it contribute? Where does it come from? As you spend more time in the program, you'll start to see some of these questions. So in addition to everything you just listed, I think those are fabulous ideas. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with over the next year. Thanks for being here, Darlene. I think with 1 moment left, Alexandre will give you one quick note. We'll bid everyone adieu.
Yeah, I guess another thing that you can do is knowing or taking notes of who has like the technical knowledge of something, so that you can mention them or for opinions when you feel that is getting too technical. So that may help as well. Yeah, knowing who are more technical and who are not is probably good to help.
Good point. We have one question in chat. I'm going to call that out. Trevor, I think everyone's curious about your desk. If you've got us on your audio. I'll tap it for him. Yep, it's real glass, deep. Real glass. All right, with that on the dot, just want to thank everyone for coming to the second Notary Governance Call of Feb 28. I'll have this on YouTube shortly. I'll see you guys on Slack and GitHub. Warmly, all the best. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.